us bread, but give us roses, bread and roses, roses, bread and roses.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to And Roses. I'm Jordan, and I'm excited to dive into another in-depth conversation about the intersections of creativity and social change. This is the 8th episode. I've been having so much fun working on this project. Every episode is a labor of love, and I'm really excited to have had the chance to explore some really fascinating conversations with artists and organizers, all about the ways that, we're navigating our creative dreams and our desires to fight for a better world. I've gotten so much enjoyment out of doing this. Trying to put out a thoughtful new media project when there's already so much stuff out there, it's definitely an uphill battle. So if you've been enjoying anything you've heard or seen from And Roses, please post about it, tag us, tell people to follow along. I'm so grateful for all the support, but this is me asking for even more. Please give me some encouragement that this is actually something that you like hearing. Now, for this week, I'm so excited to be speaking with my guest, Leann Bowen. Leann, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. Leann is a writer and producer who's worked on shows including Ted Lasso, Dear White People, and I Love You, America. Based in Los Angeles, she's also spent years as a socialist organizer, including as a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. So today we're going to chat about her journey in Hollywood, her thoughts on organizing, and whether or not Ted Lasso is just twee liberal dross. Leann, I actually, before we get into any of that, I was doing some research and I was looking at your IMDb page. And did you know that you have exactly one piece of trivia on your IMDb page?
No, I did not. I had no idea.
So it says Leann Bowen, trivia, has the word makibaka tattooed on her left arm. It is a Tagalog word
so
meaning
funny.
to fight, that is popular among Filipino activists. I was going to ask if you yourself had added this, but that's not the case.
No, absolutely not. I did do an interview with the Filipino news channel and I mentioned it. I think there's a Wikipedia page about me out there somewhere too, but it's so funny that people are on the internet just cross-referencing and adding information. That's hilarious.
If you could add an additional piece of trivia, what would you like your second piece of trivia to be?
I wouldn't. I can't. I don't. I feel weird even having trivia on there. No, I don't. I don't know.
What
I
would
wouldn't. I'll say my tattoo is, if you wanted to know what that was, well, so the tattoo Makabaka is, my mom was an activist. She's Filipino. She was an activist. And so that was one of the slogans or chants or of the movement, and that's on the back of my arm. On the front of my arm is all power to the people, because my dad was in the Black Panther Party, so I have two slogans actually on my arm, one
this
representing my
sounds like a
mom's work,
second
one's
piece of
representing my dad's
trivia
work.
just waiting to
Huh.
happen.
Who's
Well,
that? If you're
maybe
out
somebody
there,
will hear this
there you
and get
go.
inspired.
Yeah, that would be
Go up.
so insane. I had no idea. Thank you for that. That's really funny. I love that.
Absolutely. So I wanted to start by talking just a little bit about your work, most recently on Ted Lasso. And I
Yeah.
think this is really interesting because, you're somebody who I've gotten to know as a socialist organizer. And I enjoyed Ted Lasso, but one of the sort of things of media criticism that had been coming up in the last few years is something that I don't totally disagree with, which is that, you tackle a lot of social issues, racism, homophobia,
Yeah.
but it can seem a little liberal and twee, social
Yeah.
issues being
Yeah.
solved through the power of earnestness. In the final season,
Yeah.
it's greedy billionaires back down from their greedy scheme because somebody delivers a really impassioned speech and, changes their hearts. How
Sure.
do you feel about criticism like that?
Um, I think that's fair. I think the criticism is super fair. From the inside, I would say Hollywood tends to be more liberal than radical. I would agree with that assessment of a lot of things that are on TV right now. However, from a writer's point of view and an artist's point of view, I think every piece of, I mean, every TV show has a theme. And when you go into a room and you pitch a show, you pitch a theme, it's always part of your deck. And I would say Ted Lasso's theme is inherently not political, although there are like messages and stuff in there. But I think if you were to view Ted Lasso as a piece of propaganda, which is like what most art is, the point that this piece is trying to make is to combat cynicism and to promote creative, out of the box approaches to problems. I know it sounds crazy, but if you view it as a comedy, that scene where Rebecca is in a room full of billionaires and through an impassioned speech changes their minds, no one in that writer's room thinks that's how you take down billionaires. I guarantee you, we are a room of like 17 people. And of course, that's not how you handle billionaires. But what that point of the scene was a personal challenge that the character was facing. And her standing up, her finding courage, her thinking that she could defeat what seems like an impossible challenge and deciding that she had the power to do so is the point of that scene. I think it would be a pretty boring show to see us try to do what it takes to take on billionaires. And I don't think that's the point of Ted Lasso. I think the point of Ted Lasso is defeating cynicism. You have this character who is in a country that is notoriously cynical and notoriously, all the characters in season one that Ted runs into are very cynical people. And to keep the long story short, I think that's what the show is about. And I think that I think it hits that theme and it serves that thesis and everything it does. And at the same time, it's like comedy is a farce, it's a fucking cartoon,
Yeah.
So there's so many comedies out there that we just suspend belief for the enjoyment and point of the show. And I think us as, socialists or communists or anti-capitalists, they're like, nah, we are so tuned in to that, like that going on in the world that we are like, red flags go off. But I think the point of the show is defeating cynicism, which, if I might add, is the point of. I mean, I would not go as far as to say that Ted Lasso is there to support a revolutionary mind.
Thank you for not
It's
saying
not.
that.
It's not. It's definitely not. But in my own understanding of what it takes to be a revolutionary, my uncle, he was a Filipino activist and a revolutionary. And one thing that has always stuck with me, he said, a revolutionary is ultimately a positive person, a person who, no matter whatever hardline status quo that the system tries to establish, a revolutionary has the creativity and the belief that it can be broken and it can be changed. And so if you want to hold those two thoughts about Ted Lasso and the revolutionary mind in the same space, go ahead. I don't think that was the point of the creators, but I will I'll support that. Yeah, man. And in organizing, we meet people where they are. We believe in the power of each other. God, I said believe. And we see people for who they are and their strengths and what they have to contribute. So I would say that it's not that far from the work that we do. But
Yeah.
I totally, and believe me, I completely understand the twee sort of interpretation of Ted Lasso because but it's a cartoon,
It's interesting because I mean you've worked on like other cool projects already in your career, but Ted Lasso ended up being like the biggest thing that you've
Oh
worked
yeah.
on. What was that like? Or were there any like specific contributions that you were able to make that you're really proud of?
I would say being in the room, there are a ton of contributions that I am proud of. I would say like the etiquette is to not like list them off, because
Oh, I don't know
it's
about
a
this.
it,
Sorry, I'm outside of this world.
don't worry about it. We like came down on one of our actors, who's also a writer, which is like you can deduce who that is. But he did an interview on like Kimmel and he just said one thing that he was proud of. And he came into the writer's room. We're like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you can't do that. It's a collaborative. You can't take credit for anything, because it's such a collaborative effort. And then like anyone who does comedy or improv knows that one idea gets morphed into another idea. And so we all take credit for everything and nothing. So I liked being in a room with I love everyone in the writers' room. I really liked working with everyone. We didn't think it would be the biggest show in the world. I think absolutely not. We thought we were doing a show about soccer with an character from a sketch show, and it just kind of turned into this amazing thing. Yeah.
I would love to learn about your journey so far. You are somebody who is involved with producing one of the most popular television shows on the planet. And how did
Yeah.
you get here? What's your story?
Yeah, so I got into comedy through the UCB Theater here in Hollywood, and it was really, honestly, I did not go in thinking that I would come out with a career in television. I genuinely did it to challenge myself personally and do something fun and grow, which feels weird, but I fell in love with it. For me, opening the door to performance and comedy and stuff was like this really cool experience I had, and I did it, and I did it religiously, and I think I got pretty decent at it. Um, and through being at the UCB Theater, I made a lot of friends and connections, and yeah, I got my management. I was on stage. I did a show where I did a sketch character. I was Rosa Parks in Hell.
Okay.
And I was just commenting on all the people I saw in hell and why they were actually there. And it was fun. And there happened to be representation in the audience. And they said, hey, what do you want to be repped? And that is such a Hollywood story. And it doesn't happen very often. It was a really cool thing. And then, yeah, I
Well,
wrote a
can I
pilot
say it,
about,
it is
yeah,
interesting you say that you were, just working on it religiously because I have heard people describe UCB as kind of like a cult.
yeah,
But you were like one of the success stories. It did work for you.
yeah. It did work for me, but I would say I didn't feel like I was part of the cult, and not to knock UCB, but I went in a little older than everyone else, so I did it like personally religiously
But
if
and you
I
weren't even
were to say
necessarily
it.
doing
Yeah.
that because you were trying to have a new career, like, or what was it that you
Yeah.
had wanted to do before then?
I want to be a documentary filmmaker.
Okay, so you,
I
you were
am
still
like
interested like in
I
the
was still in
industry.
yeah, I was still interested in the industry, and I do have like a huge background. As my dad was an organizer, my mom was an organizer, and I had an interest in working with social issues and global issues, and like using media as a way to explore those ideas and propagate them. And then comedy was just like so fun and like cool and interesting. And then as everyone around me was pursuing that, I was like, oh, that would be fantastic if I could do. And so, and I did. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. And sorry, so you were saying after you found the representation,
Oh,
what was the
yeah.
next move?
I wrote a pilot that was about my time organizing on campus. I was part of BSU at the college I was a part of, and I integrated my character was loosely based on me and my experiences having a dad as a Panther, and like what are the challenges facing a young organizer today versus what she looked up to of her father as an organizer then, and I made it a comedy. And Dear White People happened to be staffing at that same time, and it was pretty serendipitous because I was a writer who didn't. It's very hard to break your way into the industry, and it just happened to be that this show was like my pilot, and the showrunner took a chance on me as a person with no experience in a room, which was also a really cool thing, and it just worked out. And then from there, I just got
Yeah.
meetings and ate, so on and so forth.
It does all seem like it was very serendipitous. Were there like, I
Hmm.
don't know, any lessons learned the hard way along the way?
Yeah, I mean, there was a stage in my career where I was like super obsessed with like breaking into the industry, and that just was like tearing me down, like emotionally. I guess I mean, if anyone else is in the industry, listen to me. So yeah, I think the lesson learned is to like go at your own pace for me, and like make sure I write and I contribute and I dedicate my time to things that like are worthwhile to me. And
Mhm.
that has always been the learning process and the journey that I've been on. And yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do, but like I know it's cliche, but staying true to like your own voice and your own point of view and who you are is like super important to just like your emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well,
I
it's
see that.
that's actually really interesting you say that. I feel like something that like people don't really talk about like selling out anymore. Which is not something I'm accusing you of, but I feel like it used to be
Yeah,
this sort of thing where it's like if you want to be like a true, authentic, I don't know, like activist or somebody who cares about issues, then it's just like anything mainstream is like
yeah,
that's selling out. And I am wondering if you can talk about somebody who, yeah, is a socialist, as somebody who has had actual real organizing experience.
yeah,
Like, were there times where your like actual values created friction for you in trying to get into the industry, and how did you navigate
yeah.
that?
I will say I am at a point in my career where I'm not at the helm of a show. I definitely feel like I am labor. Like I feel like I am servicing. Which is, yeah, I'm a part of a union. Like I am, my creative labor is being used to produce a product, which is a show that is being controlled and created and sort of like, so it's someone else's vision. So I do impart as much as like my own style and point of view and personality, but at the end of the day, I got to write a script based on an outline that was approved by this person, that got notes from this person. And at the end of the day, yeah, man, my fucking work is labor, and it feels like it. I've had rooms where I have to stay in the room till 3 o'clock in the morning to hit a deadline. It very quickly became apparent to me that I am labor. And the more and more I see studios and networks on top of me that are sort of like have this directive of what they want to produce and put out in a timely manner at a certain price point, yeah, I very often feel like a cog in a machine. But there's a lot of joy that comes with collaborating with other creative people that you can like sort of like complain about that with, or try to break through with, or kind of secretly sort of create within those constraints.
Yeah.
And as with our last strike, it was very apparent of like where the differences between like being creative versus making money for someone else.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Well, with everything being so like collaborative, and especially like some of the projects you've worked on have been almost like explicitly political or have had, messages about
Yeah.
social values. Like we were just talking about Ted Lasso, but I mean, maybe even more so with Dear White People. Not that, I want you to or expect you to like name and shame anybody, but have there been any times where just like in the course of the creative process, ideas that you wanted to articulate have been met with
Yeah.
like resistance by other people?
Yeah, I think a lot of the idea, like I came into Dear White People the same year I joined DSA, and I was, I do have like super radical sort of like perspective on social issues and economic issues, and when I sometimes they're just so foreign to so many people in the industry and writers room, and not because they're against them, but because they literally have never examined the world in that way. They've never heard or experienced, or it's it's so foreign sometimes. And when you try to explain it, it's like, oh no, 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 that's weird. That's crazy. I can't understand that. One example, I was in a room and I just jokingly sort of said like, well, you can't ethically make $1 billion. And I was in a room with a bunch of people who consider themselves like left, consider themselves liberal in the term of their sense of left. And they're like, what? I mean, yeah, you can. And, people were popping off. They were like, well, what about Oprah? Like, Oprah is, she's like good in
Yeah, she's
every sense of the
good.
word. And I just like, no, man, she got contracts and billions of dollars from companies like Viacom or companies like CBS, who are like, they're fucking conglomerates and fucking corporations. And I don't mind saying this about Oprah now, but OWN is her company is non-union. And that was met with like, oh, non-union, ooh, really unethical. It's like, but then that to them, a non-union status is just like a check, where it's like if you really examine, what it means for someone to work a 15-hour day on shitty pay with no support, as far as a union to fight for them, that's like that is like crazy. So yeah, so when you break it down and someone else was like, what about LeBron? He came from nothing and he just made himself a billionaire. I was like, no, he didn't. He got a sponsorship from like Nike, and Nike, is that an ethical, like the money, it's practically blood money that. So, you can't you and that was such a like, curtains off sort of like experience for a lot of people. So yeah, the industry is like notoriously liberal. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of money in the industry. I would say more than half of the people in the industry see the money that can be made. And so that instinctually attracts profiteers and the bourgeois class, and they're pitted against artists. Artists turn into that. Artists see like, oh, I have like a $2 million house, which is not a lot now because of LA housing, but like I have a 2 million, I gotta protect that. I gotta like invest in this. You just like making in the industry immediately skyrockets you into this class
Right.
that it is, and you contend with, as a socialist, I myself contend with
Yeah.
that.
Well, with the conglomeration, the consolidation of capital in the industry, like historically in Hollywood, there were, and I'm very fuzzy on this history. You might be able to enlighten me a
Hmm.
little bit, but there were moments where it really was like red Hollywood. Like there was like
Oh
socialists and
yeah.
communists like staffing up and
Oh
trying to use the studios to like spread their propaganda. And of course,
yeah.
this was like targeted by McCarthyism and the
Mhm.
blacklisting. But in today's environment, is it even worth trying? Like the conditions are different. Is it possible to try to use Hollywood as, if you're somebody who's a socialist, to
Oh
can
yeah.
you get your project made? Can you get your influence on when you're swimming uphill
You
against
should.
all of these
You
profiteers?
you should and you could, because at the end of the day, you are the power, you are their power. So when Adam McKay makes like Don't Look Up, or no one's going to say, Adam McKay, please stop talking about this. It takes a, like, not to say that I am like I co-sign that movie or anything, but yeah, man, like you can, I mean, secretly, if I were to like, if you were to look into like the little wheels in my brain, I'm like biding my time until I can like really like inseminate my media with like socialist propaganda. But it's such a weird place to be in, because it's harder and harder to make that kind of art now with the way the industry is working. But at the end of the day, it's what the people want and what the people love and what the people come back for. Then the industry, they want that. It's
Mm.
it's like we both want that. It's, I guess it would be the one thing that the artists and the industry would agree upon is like making media for people and people consuming it in mass.
So then the other thing that I was wondering about is, I think a lot of people, yeah, maybe see that as a possibility, but I think a lot of people on the left, there's a real tension, and this is something that sort of comes up like on this show, is like, I have like these creative dreams. I want to like create propaganda, and I want to like get into the system as it exists, not to change it from the inside per se, but just like pursuing a creative career and trying to do
Yeah.
that socialistly, versus the realization of, okay, well, like I couldn't get my dream job. I couldn't get in there, and I like the change is so urgently needed, rather than
Hmm.
like just spending a bunch of time trying to build a creative career. Like I'm just going to organize, or I'm going to get
Yeah.
a job as a teacher or as a nurse in
Yeah.
some strategic sector. Yeah, how do you think about like navigating that sort of, just you don't have time to necessarily do it all. You don't necessarily have as much time for like knocking doors or canvassing when your career actually does take off.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think I got into the industry to do that. I did it because I'm an artist and I have a love of creating and being funny and making comedy. It's a bonus that is like a parallel directive of mine, but I don't think that is at the end of the day like the like success of like what I try to do. And I would say anyone trying to get in the industry has the same sort of struggles with landing a job, making it, getting anything made is a struggle. And as someone who was trying for a long time to balance organizing and working in the industry, I just had two kids. It's like it's impossible. So you just have to choose a path that like satisfies you as a person, but at the same time doesn't compromise, I mean, you have to make compromises, but doesn't compromise too much of what makes your time worthwhile. I will say it's like I think we're all working in conjunction with each other as organizers, whether it be like on the ground working with people versus like creating media that can like break through ideas. I do think we're in this important phase where we truly have to educate and like educate, educate, educate. And I would say that's something that we kind of fucked up on in our early days organizing. I would say we were so at my time, and we still are, is like, yeah, we have generations of like a couple generations of people are so far removed from like examining the world and like in a way that like the status quo of what we're living in doesn't have to be this way. And
Hmm.
like and we need to support people's education about social issues and education rather than just being like, oh, you don't know this, so you're the fucking enemy. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, we do. We have to educate in a way that is like super supportive of our movement and of them as people, as human beings. Because I think at the end of the day, we all want something good, And it's just like, how do we get there? And the more we like close doors to to ideas, it's like it just is we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So that being said, there's a multi-pronged sort of way that we can all collaboratively engage in that process, whether it's going to meetings, talking to your neighbors, creating a movie with just like the tiniest little like theme of, challenging systems. Yeah, it's like tiny chisels at this wall that we're all doing. So no one way is the right way because the best you could be in that process is the best that could possibly happen. So,
What I appreciate about you is, of course, like you're not just somebody who talks the talk and has like big ideas about how to make the world a better place. Like you have walked the walk. When we met, it was because you were somebody. And in fact, I was actually thinking about this the other day. I moved to Los Angeles. I became a member of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, when I was living in San Diego. And it was this time when like a lot of people were joining, like after Trump got elected. I
yeah.
went to one of my first meetings there, and it was just like kind of overwhelming. I didn't really know how to get plugged in. It was kind of far from my house. I maybe went back once, but I knew I was moving to Los Angeles later in the year, so I was like, oh, what's the point? I'll try again when I get to Los Angeles. I was really
Yeah.
excited, to come to LA. There's a new, chapter of this socialist organization, a new chance for me to join. And there was like a picnic, and I was like,
Hmm.
okay, this is so awesome. I get to meet the other socialists. I brought my girlfriend. I brought two other friends. And maybe it was just because of the fact that like we showed up as a group and it looked like we were people that knew each other. It's not like it was just somebody sitting by themselves. But like nobody came and talked to us. And I was like, I don't, everybody's just here talking to themselves. Nobody came up and talked to us except for you.
Oh,
You were like the person that came up and like you recognized that, we were new there and we chatted. You gave me some information. It was great. So you were somebody who,
oh,
even when
thanks.
I was getting involved in trying to like knock down the door and learn how to be a socialist, you were somebody who for me made it a little bit easier than it would have been otherwise.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
thank
means a
you.
lot to
Thank
me.
you,
Thank
Leann.
you. That's
But
fantastic.
I would love to learn a little bit more about kind of, yeah, your journey to that point, just in terms of like your, political developments. You're
Yeah,
starting from a very unique position. Not a lot of
yeah, I
people
am.
have two organizer parents, especially not a father who is in the Black Panther Party.
Yeah, I think a lot of people give me a lot more credit because of that. I wouldn't say that I feel a type of way about people giving me that credit when I've been around so many organizers. I'm like, man, you guys are fantastic. And like how much you've educated yourself and how much you dedicate your time and effort and energy is amazing. And I do think I get too much credit But I would say that specific experience, I was a member of like the membership committee. And so we have whole meetings about like, how to integrate, like meet people and integrate people and not making them feel welcome. So I think that was a directive of the membership committee. But yeah, so my dad was in the Black Panther Party. My mom was in this group called NCRCLP, which is a socialist Filipino organization that formed after the Marcos dictatorship. They were also heavily involved in organizing in LA and with migrant workers in California. And that's how my mom and dad met. They were just in the same circles. They were in a Marxist reading group with Karen Bass. Dare I say it?
Wow.
She would hate, she'd like, have, don't let anyone know. But
I'm
they were,
clipping it.
yeah, you can put it. It's funny because like LA before that time was a very like conservatively run city, and then there was this like generation of like Mark Lee Thomas or what's his name? Yeah,
Yeah, yes.
yeah, he was also a Marxist.
Hmm.
So there's this whole crop of like little radical kids in the 60s and 70s that are doing what we're kind of doing now in LA. We have how many people on city council? God forbid that they move right the way that Karen and Mark did. But yeah, so they met and they were in that LA scene and they met and they got married. They had us, and then quickly after they had kids, moved into like domestic life. Like my mom got a full-time job at Amtrak, and my dad was an electrician. But then my dad eventually moved back to organizing. He moved back up. My parents split, and my dad moved up north, and he continued being an organizer in Northern California. So I was always like, my dad would like take me to meetings, and I would like sit in meetings for hours as people just talk and talk. And as a
Hmm.
kid, it was like, ugh. But I think being in those spaces, I think makes me comfortable in organization, and it's like kind of exciting now to be in the space, and I genuinely miss it because of kids and COVID. But yeah, I want to keep doing it, and I want to like retire. I mean, I gotta support these kids now. I'm feeling a little like my parents, but I want to retire and go back, get back to it, or find time later doing it. So I don't think I'm special or anything. But my parents, I did understand capitalism at a very young age. My dad took me to hear Nelson Mandela speak when I was 8. When I was in the mid 90s, I went to the Black Panther reunion and like Tupac's mom was there speaking. And I was just like, that's Tupac's mom.
Wow.
Afeni Shakur and Angela Davis. And yeah, maybe it's because I didn't know anything else, but it just seemed all pretty normal to me. And so it's not hard. I guess it was never hard for me to challenge ideas and stuff like that. Cause I guess, yeah, I grew up pretty anti-Catholic.
Was there ever a moment where, you wanted to rebel against your parents and you considered becoming like a free
God, no.
market?
No. I mean, I will say like I like wanted a fast car and like I like things. I say that's the extent of like me like supporting the free market, having things seen, but those aren't conditional to capitalism. If
Yeah.
anything,
I think that's
capitalism
allowed.
limits you more. Yeah, that's allowed. I would say I'm a champagne socialist. I would say every seat in on a plane should feel like first class because
Yeah.
we all deserve it. Yeah, we don't need to
Oh,
max out profit. I think we should all have a glass of champagne and a lie back seat. Like that is who I am.
Leann is defending air travel.
I'm, I'm a
I was with you
defending
up
first
until that
class.
point. I need to draw the line.
Oh,
How
oh,
about
oh,
the
oh,
first
no.
class experience on a train?
On a train. Well, I mean, we if it weren't so profitable to have these combustion engine planes, let's innovate technology that it is more like ecologically like sound. Like we can
Yeah.
do it. Like, let's get creative.
Yeah, I think everybody should spend, a year or two of their lives just, working as like the attendant on the train, delivering the first class experience, and then for the rest of your life, you get to enjoy the first class experience.
I think the attendants should have their own car that is a first class experience, and their shift should only be like 2.5 hours at a time.
Okay.
And champagne
Yeah.
for everyone in all aspects. of
We'll
the
we'll
like
figure this
tiers.
out.
We'll get there. We'll start at the Google Doc.
I am curious because yeah, and fully understandable. People, you feel like people give you too much credit just because of sort of the legacy of your parents. But just like
Yeah.
in your own experience, you were involved with like student organizing, and then you were involved with DSA socialist organizing. Now from this period where yeah, you've gotten busy, you're a mother. I'm just kind of curious, like, have your have your thoughts on like what should people who want to change the world be doing? Like, what should that organization look like?
I think it's been said, but start local and work on, I mean, ultimately start personal, making sure you're taking care of yourself and making sure your objectives are clear and making sure that you have time and space to like take care of yourself while doing the work. And then, yeah, just engaging locally with an organization and these things that we try to do in DSA is like not reinvent the wheel, but sort of like join a wheel and sort of like contribute as much as you can to there's like so many organizations and groups of people that need power, need people and taking small steps there and not and also like recognizing that you're not going to change the world in a day, it's like it is incremental. It's, not in a liberal sense, but like it's incremental in the work that you do day to day and making sure you like find satisfaction in that and making sure your personal matches your political about the way you interact with people and support people and treat people and like respect people and like also give your own boundaries. It is small, it's super small. And like the time will come and the movement will come where like you are so connected in this smaller unit that, power can grow through those things sort of aligning and communicating well.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the sort of like organization aspect of that. And yeah, like I feel like several years ago I heard people saying this, or maybe especially really like peaked around 2020, in this moment where like so many people are just so confused, like what's going on in the world, what can we do? And a really common refrain was like join an organization. Just like join an organization. And lots of
Yeah.
people were pointing to the specific organization that they thought that folks should join. I'm a
Yeah.
member of DSA. I've tried to tell people to join DSA. But I also have noticed a trend, from what I understand, membership in a lot of political organizations since 2020 has kind of fallen off of a cliff.
Yeah.
And like DSA, actually, it is an exception in the fact that like membership hasn't necessarily plummeted.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people did sort of attempt to join an organization, but then run into the frictions of okay, there's like hostility inside. It creates extra like emotional baggage in your life. But
Yeah.
then of
Yeah.
course, like as the economy has opened back up and things have gone back to normal. I'm doing air quotes if you're just listening. Just like getting busy with work again or having a family
Yeah.
actually became like just real material obstacles to participating in an organization. You're somebody who I think like that was kind of what happened to you, like with
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
and now you're a mother. Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts about that phrase or that idea, like join an organization, when you're at a stage in your life where it's like the level of participation that you have experienced in the past, like it's just not feasible for you anymore?
Yeah, I think it isn't feasible. It's really difficult. I will, when I have the time, I will absolutely come back to organizing and contributing. I think that pressure to like constantly be a part of it and do it is like it's not helpful. If you can join an organization and you have time, that's fantastic. And I will come to it when I can. But if I can't, I can't. And I do think that there's an opportunity for organizations to realize that as a setback and create opportunities for people with limited time and make sure that those opportunities are presented to people. Hey, I know you may have like a family or this or that, but like you could do this if you want to do this and so on and so forth. But like if you can't, you can't. That's fine. I mean, this whole movement is like it's longer, it'll be longer than our lifetime. So like let's just do what we can when we can and know that someone will pop in and someone will pop out, someone will pop in, someone will pop out, and like support the people who are in it for the long run and the long time and doing it the whole time. Like kudos to them.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. But like, yeah, just that pressure to be always on and doing it is like it's just too much. And
Yeah.
you know, the system um that may be a condition of a capitalist society of like you have to be productive at all stages. It's like, yeah, man, let's pull out and pull back and like realize how long this is going to be and what we can contribute and see the value of like, you know, not killing ourselves
Mm.
of guilt, I guess, but like being like supportive of what we can do and hopefully make it easier. Try your
Yeah.
best to make it people easier for other people.
One final question, kind of on the subject of organizing, and we can actually skip this if you feel like you don't have a great answer. But yeah, the not a lot of people got to grow up in like proximity to a member of the Black Panther
Yeah.
Party.
Yeah.
Yet, looking back, I feel like there were so many radical revolutionary organizations in
Oh
that
yeah.
era in the 60s and 70s. But Black Panther Party has a kind of like uniquely enduring legacy. A lot more people have heard of it than many others. It's something that you hear people point to: free breakfast programs and
Hmm.
like community like education. And there's so many, it's really like lauded as like, oh, if we could, we should be more like that. If we could be more like that or function more like them, like we would be in a better position as the left. And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just kind of curious, like, what are some things that, you wish that in your experience or that you observe, like, were really positive, or what are some things that you feel like maybe aren't actually as well suited for the moment that we live in anymore?
I think the Panther Party was in a unique moment of time where the material necessity for them was pretty visceral. Like my dad grew up in Richmond and it was formed in Oakland, and I remember the first page of the first Black Panther Party newspaper was this kid, Denzel Dowell, who was 16 and he was shot by the police and his body was just left in the street to die. And like we like now, like and it happened often and regularly, and it was like, you know, like there was the bombing in Alabama where like kids were bombed, which we are also viscerally dealing with that now. So when the moment like that is like the material necessity for it was just so there was no radicalization needed, there was no education needed, there was no convincing needed for Black people to like it was like, yeah, I get it, you know, there. And so that was like, it was almost so, it had to happen. And along with that, there was also another side of the coin, which was the nonviolent resistance to racism and subjugation that was happening. Uh, that was that predated the Black Panther Party. So yeah, it the country, the system, the country had pushed us everyone into that moment. I would, and so organizing was not easier, but like necessary. And I would say now that the system has learned, like as we are learning, and the system is also learning that like you have to sort of sedate and you have to sort of placate and you have to give, oh, let's give some people a seat at the table. And so that it is like, um, it's harder, it's like if the movement is to divest from a system that profits from war, that is a little more convoluted rather than like, get your gun, cock it, load it. We're patrolling the streets because these motherfuckers can't shoot us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's a different it's a different thing to attack. I would say one thing I was impressed with when I went to the anniversary of the Black Panther Party, I was really impressed. Every panel that I saw and listened to, they were so reflective of themselves. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? And it was always about it has stuck with me of their personal responsibility they felt as organizers over themselves, despite probably their takedown being, agencies and the police and the CIA and
Mm-hmm.
efforts to quell them. And I think that's something that we can do as well. And so, this, I don't think we can replicate what that the Black Panther Party did. They were a group of people, they're Black people, a group of people who were look at each other and see themselves in each other, see exactly what each other were going through. And I think when we're dealing with like economic issues or capitalism, or like at the same time, like the labor movement was like children were dying in factories, like it was so visceral a need to organize labor against the shit. Now it just, I mean, everything is pushing us to that again, and the moment will happen again because we will resist when it will happen, but we just don't want to get to that point. We don't want to get to that visceral point where we want to do with it now and effectively, but we don't want to see people die from being overworked and not having health care. I mean, it's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the moment called for it, and it will do it again. And you know so
Yeah, just that idea of that like sort of moment of radicalization. It's a very sobering period of times, kind of like the end of 2020 around the presidential election. It was like
yeah.
we had COVID and it was like society is shutting down, and then everybody's at home, and then that summer there are just protests and some places riots and uprising
Yeah.
in the streets. And that like truly felt like this could be a moment like people have had enough, they're recognizing, like they're
Yeah.
waking up. And by the end of that year, like that energy had not entirely dissipated, but there like the tension was gone. It was, let's get back to normal for the most part. And it was just kind of this moment of like, oh, I'm a revolutionary socialist. Like we're trying to build like a mass movement to like completely change the world order. But the fact of the matter is that at least for right now, despite like how shitty everything is, feels like it's getting, and like actual statistically is getting shitty, like people still are just like feel like there is a normal that they're comfortable with, and they are happy
Yeah.
to preserve that. And that is actually
Yeah.
the moment that we're in by and large.
Yeah. And I would say that's a product of the system of like giving us just enough, you know, you know, God, like Elizabeth Warren's video where she like addressed people, but put like in like the background on like a bookcase, the letters BLM. Everyone's like, look, Elizabeth Warren. Someone's like, no, she doesn't. She's just fucking like making you think she cares. If she cared, as soon as her mic went off, she would have said, Black Lives Matter. This is what I'm gonna do, XYZ. But people are so fucking placated by this like tiny little black girl, like, hi, I see you. And it's like,
Yeah.
but we're learning now, like, we can't even be, that's not enough. That's not going to work. As we see the way the police are responding to campus encampments, it's like, though it's not done. Just because they say it, just because like Kamala Harris gets on a microphone and says, like, we see you, seeing it isn't enough. Like, fucking do something. And that moment will come where we're like, we're tired of lip service. We're tired of, people who are placated by those words are soon going to just see that they're words. And yeah, and that it's going to happen. And as this like war machine is being exposed, and the difference between what is being told to us and what is actually happening in this like industrial military complex that we are like living under, and then that's slowly being exposed, that's going to be a moment too, and we're moving towards it. And yeah, it's just weeding out the bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure how to like do a smooth transition, because there were a couple more things that we said that we wanted to chat about a little bit.
Yeah.
This is related, but just the like commodification of art. That was something that you said had kind of been on your mind recently. You want to?
Yeah, I think as a writer in the industry, I'm like so disturbed by the like the way that like networks and studios and like companies are sort of like just influencing art right now, and it sucks. And it's just like their headspace right now is like, how can we like save our profits? And I think all artists are really taking such a huge beating right now. And
Mm,
it's kind of sad. I mean, we really are at the whim of their sort of like their bottom line. Yeah, and it sucks. I don't
Yeah.
know what else to say about it.
It sucks. It really sucks. I mean, so what can workers do? Is there, I mean, we in Hollywood we have unions, and that's like a really
Yeah,
powerful tool that,
yeah,
workers last summer proved that they were able to like hold the line. I mean,
yeah,
IOTC is in negotiations right now.
yeah.
But it's just like in this climate, it just feels so defensive. Is it something that it's just like stay away, get out while you can? It's just going to the dogs, or yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know.
can we make a better world short of the revolution?
I mean,
What do
yeah,
we do while
yeah.
we're biding our time?
Just keep fighting, I mean, imagine if we gave up and on the writer's strike. Imagine if we have to be stronger than their bottom line. And like, so many, man, like if you think about the industry back before the Red Scare, where they like owned like actors, and like, people fought and fought hard, and people lost, and a lot of people sacrificed. You just gotta keep the fucking pen at their necks if that's what you want to use. But like, I mean, the opposite of that is an even worse defeat of AI being used to generate, oh God, to generate content, and us not being able to own our work. Or yeah, it's a constant push pull, and they know it too.
Hmm.
They know that they can't. It's going to be a constant push pull, and so as long as we stay in solidarity, so it is really depressing. Like, the outlook on work and creativity right now is not great. But at the end of the day, we are all trying to entertain, and the people want to be entertained
Hmm.
and see art. And I would say, to be lofty, the human spirit like needs art. And I think at the end of the day, authenticity in art is like a cool drink of water on a hot day. So the minute that we become oversaturated with bullshit and like something authentic breaks through, everything's gonna pivot. And so just yeah, keep the eye on that prize.
Yeah. Well, it's like, what are you gonna do? Give
What are you
up?
gonna do? Yeah.
And then what are you going to do after that? And then what are you going to
Yeah.
do after that? Like, this is
Yeah.
all keeps going. We're still
It keeps
here. We
going. It's
And if you're, I don't know, yeah, it's there's certainly no shame in like if you have a creative dream or vision, you want to work in some industry, but you find it like not necessarily working out for you, and
mhm.
it's easier for you to provide for yourself or for your family by
Oh yeah.
choosing a different route. Like that's obviously not a problem, but
Yeah.
but that's not like giving up either. That's just like choosing a different path to like get yourself what you need. I feel like
No.
that's what we're all just trying to do here, is whether we're trying to meet our like our dreams, our creative visions, or just to put food on the table. We're just trying to figure out how to meet our own needs. And if
Yeah.
capitalists get in the way of that, then we band together as workers to try to take them down a peg. Leann, anything else on your mind today?
No. I thank you for the conversation. It was fun and interesting to think about all those things.
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed it too. Have a great day. I'll talk to you
You
later.
too.